All right, before we get into the specific things that you need in stock-related agreements, there are some people that don't fully understand how equity or stock works in a company. So you want to think of shares as property that a company gives to an individual. And that individual is the only person that's basically allowed to have and possess and hold those particular shares, kind of as if they're like unique treasures. So the way not to think about equity is that you're giving shares to someone, and that person can then take some portion of those shares and then trade them to other founders or other investors, or sell a portion of their holding in the company to others. And most of the time I find that people that are coming into the private company context thinking that that's possible, in other words, the transfer of shares from a founder or another stockholder to another one, are more familiar with publicly traded stock, which is a lot more freely transferable and is more liquid and fungible. So because startups are private companies, their stock is not freely transferable or fungible. So it's not like having a bunch of marbles that you can then sell off later as you want to change the cap table and ownership. So each time the company is going to change its ownership, it is the party that's issuing new shares to someone. If you find yourself in the early phases of a company's history saying, we're just going to take from this person and give to that person and do these transfers, you're essentially already on the wrong track. And you need to find, generally speaking, a different solution for that. So I'm not saying that in all cases such transfers are absolutely illegal, but they need to be done properly, and it is generally considered to lead to what's called a messy cap table or a messy ownership record. So it indicates generally a problem, either that the company took investors that weren't quite the right fit for the kind of company that you're talking about, or that there's some kind of bad relationship involved between different people. But most importantly, it conveys that a founder doesn't quite understand how the game of angel and venture capital is played, and that it would reflect poorly on the company and the founders to have any of those kinds of transfers occurring as you're going to raise money from third-party investors. So again, these are not things that you just trade from one party to another. You cannot just adjust people's percentage interests as you can in an LLC, which may be more flexible, like a services business kind of LLC. This is something where the company is issuing stock to new people coming on board. Everyone is diluted in proportion to one another. There are no special factors where you only dilute one person versus another. If you're thinking about equity in the startup context where you're going to raise angel or venture capital, I would say you're well on the wrong track if you're thinking about it in this manner, and you should try to get out of that mindset as quickly as possible and ask an advisor who's used to doing these kinds of cap table cleanups before you go to an investor who notices these things and tells you them.